Hello, friends. Welcome back to my podcast. This is Carly Wharton. This podcast, if you will notice, has undergone a bit of a transformation, and that is only fitting because I myself have undergone a transformation. Good times. If you know me even a little bit at all, you know that change is one of my absolute favorite things, and the most recent change I can speak of is changing the title of this podcast from I Learned. We did 115 or so episodes under that banner, and now we'll be continuing on, at least for the next little while, under the banner of life-changing learning. I heard a quote this morning and this new name instantly popped into my head. It was like, never be afraid to figure out how can you say it better. Whether it's the content that you're sharing, the name of the podcast, the core messaging, like whatever it is, like if you can say it better, if you can cut through more noise with just a few words, then do that. Like, we don't have to cling to anything because, I started under this name and now I can't change it. Who says? That's what I want to know. Who says you can't change it? Because this is my show, right? And whatever platform each of us creates for ourselves, whether that's our own personal social media or we want to set up some kind of platform like a podcast or a YouTube channel or an Etsy shop or whatever it is, we own that. And having ownership of something means that it's under your creative control. So at any moment that you feel like pivoting, you feel like, you know what, I could say it better. It would be even more clear if instead of calling it I Learned, a story of things that I learned, the main trigger that went off was like, that could be anything. People learn things all the time that make their lives worse. And even life-changing learning has some openness to, well, did it change things for the better or did it change things for the worse? And in my case, my stories are always the things that changed my life for the better. And I wanted to really emphasize that it's not just about learning. It's not just about acquiring new information, because that doesn't necessarily do anything to change your life. When you implement what you learned, it will change your life. When you take new steps, you get new results. When you will believe new things, when you'll think new thoughts, you'll believe that it's possible to take new steps. And like we said, the new steps get you the new results. So these stories of life-changing learning, I think every single episode I've already done, it still falls very much in this ballpark of things that I learned that changed my life for the better. And going forward, it's just that much more on the nose of life-changing learning. So welcome to a brand new season, a brand new era of this podcast. I am so excited to be here with you. And for this very first episode under this new banner, I want to talk about something that has sincerely changed my life. Like, as far as doing a complete 180 with what my life even is. And that topic is astrology. So learning astrology changed my life. And I want to get into that in typical Carly fashion. We're going to, explore as much as is fun to do and talk about how and why and what even brought astrology into my life. Because believe it or not, I didn't go looking for astrology. I didn't go looking to learn about the planets and the stars. And actually, what I really wanted and what clicked into place that led me down that path was, for basically my whole 20s, I had this awareness that I want to work with a life coach. I just always knew that someday I'm going to work with a life coach. I'm going to hire a life coach and they're going to coach my life and it's going to be great. And that was literally the extent of what I even knew about what life coaches do. They coach your life like that. See, I'm informed. I had been in my teens and early 20s and mid 20s. I had been to several, couple, two, three handfuls of therapists and had varying levels of success with, talk therapy and all of the different cognitive behavioral therapy and the different methods that they try, and felt a little bit better along the way. But really, the turning point that happened was kind of a dark day in my life where I was having some relationship issues. My personal romantic relationship at the time, this was the summer of 2016, it was really hard on me with my personal issues, and those personal issues can be summed up in one word: jealousy. I was a very jealous person, and my significant other happened to be a very flirtatious person. And that combination was like kerosene on a flame and led me to my darkest day on this planet. And that led me to a new therapist. The last therapist that I have seen at this point, that was 2016, so almost 8 years ago. But I walked into that therapist's office, and within 5 minutes of listening to me, she hands me something called the Deservability Treatment by Louise Hay. And it's a piece of paper. It's got 5 paragraphs on it. Each paragraph has a few sentences, and she's like, "Here, read this out loud." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I can read out loud." I was always the kid in school that was like super excited when I got to be the one that read out loud, even though I would almost always mess it up and then beat up on myself. But I still really like to do it. I like to practice. And so, okay, here I go. I'm going to read this out loud. And within the first 2 sentences, I am bawling and tell her I can't do this. And she's like, "Yes, you can. Take your time. Whatever needs to come out is fine, but read it out loud." And I made it all the way through the end of the Deservability Treatment, and it was very eye-opening as far as yes, my issues are manifesting as jealousy, but truly what is going on here is that I don't believe that I am worthy of love, period. I'm jealous because I think it's only a matter of time before he's gonna actually fall in love with someone who's lovable. Why wouldn't he? Because I'm not lovable, and I've got all these flaws and all these faults and all of these things that are repelling, and it's only a matter of time. And so that lack of deservability, that lack of self-worth, that lack of believing that anyone could really love me, I mean, talk about cutting straight through to the heart of the issue, was wild. And so she gave me the homework of read this Deservability Treatment out loud, looking at yourself in the mirror every day for at least 30 days. And I, being the overachiever that I am, I read it multiple times a day, mostly because it was so triggering. It was like I could feel how much every cell of my body disagreed with the statements on that page. And at the same time, the statements were so beautiful and so lovely, and I wanted them to be true. For example, I am deserving of all good. I was like, no, I'm not. Because this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with me. I had laundry lists of all the reasons why I did not deserve all good, and yet I wanted it to be true. And so I went and over the course of, I think it was actually closer to 2 or 3 months, read it in the mirror every day, looking at myself as much as I could. And I could still remember the moment. I'm standing there looking in the mirror, and I said, I forget which part it was, but I smiled. And I smiled because I believed that it was true. And that took about 2 weeks. 2 weeks of crying it out all the pain that was in the way of me believing that it was true. And I smiled. I smiled at the realization that, you know what? Yes, this is true. I am deserving. I deserve love. I deserve good things. That's true. And so that was July 8th of 2016 that I was handed the deservability treatment. That was about 6 months before I left my software company job, and about a year before I moved from Texas back to Kansas to open the grocery store that I would eventually open. But that moment of being handed the deservability treatment, talk about life-changing learning, like learning how to find my way to worthiness, incredible. And that's not even the point of this episode, because that's just how I got on my spiritual path. Because that next morning, July 9th of 2016, so like this is just one day after I read the deservability treatment. I've read it maybe twice at this point and cried my eyes out both times. I woke up the morning of July 9th, 2016 and said, I am so done living like this. And I meant the 15 years of chronic depression that I had been living. I mean, I would get myself up out of it for maybe a few weeks at a time, and then I would slide back down into another 6 to 12 months of dark depression. And I listened to this channel on YouTube called Healthy Gamer. He's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, and he talks about how depression is a chemical issue. It really only lasts like a few months, maybe 6, if you're really out of balance, and then your body will balance itself back out. So he's like, if you've been depressed for 15 years, that's not a chemical imbalance. That is existential depression. That's like your soul telling you that you're in the wrong place. You're looking at life in the wrong way. Your training is faulty. Your programming is faulty. The thoughts that you're thinking on a daily basis are wrong. And that's not a chemical imbalance, right? That's a mindset issue. And I definitely resonate with that, because at the end, like when I quote unquote like cured my depression, or rather put it into remission now for almost 8 years, it wasn't any kind of medicine that did that other than the words on the page of the deservability treatment. So I woke up July 9th, 2016, and was just done with living like this. And I gave myself permission that either I'm going to be happy or I'm really done. I'm really done with this life. And that was oddly comforting in a way that said, this is my last chance. And so you might as well go all in on this last chance. So my solution as far as going all in was, this is a Saturday morning, July 9th, 2016, and I don't have to be back at work until Monday. And I had enough experience up to that point with self-care and doing daily self-care. That's how I would pull myself out of my depression for a few weeks, would be to every single day do some self-care, whether that is journaling or making a gratitude list or taking a long walk or going for a little jog or whatever it is, that every day I would make it a priority to do that, because I'm so ready to feel better. And then I think this is like a classic, what ends up happening is that I would feel better. And then because I felt better, I would get really social. I would get really engaged with other people. I would like be hanging out with friends. I would, join online dating or whatever crazy adventure. And then because I was so engaged with everyone else, I would stop doing the daily self-care. I would stop taking my medicine because I feel better now. And then it would be just a matter of time before I would slide back down into 6 to 12 more months of depression. And then I'd be like, oh God, I'm sick of this. I'm ready to feel better. And so I would start self-care again. So I had been doing that process of like having these stutter starts of self-care for about, like 2 years maybe at that point. And having success with it, but then always falling off the wagon and going back to being someone who didn't take care of myself, who was so focused on work and everyone else, putting myself at the last place on my list, and just not having any gas left in the tank for me. And it was that morning, July 9th, 2016, that I decided, I'm going to do 2 days, like a self-care retreat. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here in my apartment, but I'm going to meditate. I'm going to cook myself healthy food. I'm going to go for walks. I'm going to take a jog. I'm going to go to yoga. I am going to, for 8 hours a day, both days, Saturday and Sunday, I am going to do nothing but feel better. Do things that help me feel better, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And that day, Saturday, was day 1. And then the next day, Sunday, was day 2. And then I decided that, you know what, I'm going to count these days. I'm going to just keep adding them up, kind of like an addict or an alcoholic. Like when they're trying to kick their addiction, they count the days of their sobriety. Like I was addicted to not taking care of myself. And breaking that addiction was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. Those first 30 days especially were incredibly challenging. When you're building any kind of a new habit, it's always going to be hardest in the beginning. And I will say though, by the time I got to like 30 days, like I was a different person, and I had this mindset that was very different than before, which said, I'm never going to stop. Like when you're trying to lose weight, and some people will take on a diet, like they want to diet, they want to lose weight, and that's their goal, is that they're going to do this diet until they hit their goal weight, quote unquote. And then other people will come to it from a place of a lifestyle change. Like, I'm not going to live like that anymore. I'm going to do it different for the rest of my life. And I would say for me, I had always come to self-care more like a diet. Like, I'm going to do it until I feel better. And then I'm done doing it because now I feel better. And this was the first time that I had approached it like a lifestyle change. Like, I am going to do self-care every day for the rest of my life till death do us part. And that was almost 8 years ago. And in the 8 years that have passed since then, I have taken I think it was like 20-day break that was a whole thing, and we can get into that story another time. But that shift, that readiness of like, I am ready for the lifestyle change. I'm ready for feeling better for the rest of my life. I went looking on YouTube that Saturday for, guided meditations, I think is what I typed into YouTube. And I listened to a couple from Sam Harris. He was the meditation teacher that I knew, the one and only that I knew at the time. And I did those, but I had done those many times. And I was like, I want to like branch out. Let me find some other cool guided meditations that I can like have in my pocket ready to go for when I really need to like calm myself down. And so I kept scrolling, and I came across this one that was like a general well-being guided meditation by Abraham Hicks. No idea who that is. And I listened to it, and there's like so many, she says stuff throughout the entire the entire meditation. But a lot of it too is like her just saying, breathe in, breathe out. Like, it just was so relaxing and calming and soothing. And so I like Abraham Hicks guided meditations, and see if she has any other ones, like, what else do you got, Abraham Hicks? No idea what's going on at this point. And I come across a video that same day that's called Morning Rampage. And this one is about 13 minutes long, and it's set to music, and it's not quite a meditation. It's quite a bit more upbeat than a meditation. But basically it like loops around this thought that like, this is a new day. This is a new morning. I'm new today. I'm new this morning. Like, that's definitely paraphrasing, but like, it's a new day. This is not yesterday. This is not, the 15 years of chronic depression. This is a new day, right? Like, this is a good day. And so for 13 minutes, she loops around this like, have a good outlook of like what today could be. And I proceeded to listen to that morning rampage video every single day for about 2 years, except for the 20-day break. That was in the second year. But yeah, for about 2 years, I started my day with those 13 minutes. And for like going back to work on that Monday, like right after I had this whole experience that weekend, like I would play that morning rampage video when I was in the shower getting ready to go to work. Like I'm gonna shower for 10 minutes. I gotta brush my teeth. I gotta get dressed. Like, yeah, that's about 15 minutes. Okay. And then I'm gonna go to work. And so like I wasn't getting up any earlier or anything, but I was playing that video for myself instead of playing the really depressing music I had been playing for myself while I showered. And so that was how it started. And that first week or so, I pretty much just did that. I wasn't waking up any earlier. And then it got to the point where like I felt so good from the morning rampage video that I was like, I want to listen to another video. Like, so that was when about the second week that I started getting up about 15 minutes earlier. Like I got to be at work at 7. And so instead of getting up at 6:30, let me get up at like 6:15. And so that way, like, here, let me make like 1 cup of coffee. I'll listen to that video, the morning rampage video, while I sip my coffee. And then I'll play a different video when I go get in the shower. And that built its way up into like the third week. Here, let me get up at 6, because now I'll have time to listen to 3 videos before I have to be at the office. And that eventually led to like when I quit 6 months later, I was having to be at work at 7 and I was setting my alarm for 4 a.m. so that I could do 3 hours roughly of morning time, of self-care time, of listening to Abraham, journaling, stretching, sipping my coffee, having breakfast, investing all of this energy into myself, pouring all of this energy into myself before I had to be at work. Like before that, I mean, I would wake up at like 6:30, 6:40 and then have to be at work at 7 a.m. And when I show up at work at 7 a.m., there's people standing at my desk. My phone is ringing. Like my emails are coming in like, hey, we need you for this. We need this. We need this. What about this? This is broken. Help me with this. What about this? What about this? So like to go from, you've been awake for like 20 minutes and now everyone in the world needs you for something. Like, no wonder my gas tank was empty. No freaking wonder. And so those hours of self-care, that was really where my spiritual journey began, because as it turns out, Abraham Hicks is a law of attraction teacher, and Abraham Hicks is a woman. Esther Hicks is actually the woman's name, and she channels or brings through the intelligence of Abraham. Abraham is the consciousness, the infinite intelligence that speaks through her. They are 2 distinct entities. Esther is not Abraham. Abraham is not Esther. And when you watch interviews with Esther, you can really see the difference when she's channeling Abraham and when she's not. But anyway, so she teaches law of attraction, and the whole point of law of attraction is that you get back what you put out. Like what's going on inside of you, the energy that you have and the emotions and the feelings that you have, that's what's coming back to you. And here I was in 15 years of chronic depression. Here I was in the middle of a relationship that was really pushing me to my breaking point. Here I was at a job that I was on a daily basis, like, quote, angry with them for not seeing my value. And then here she is saying that life is only a reflection of you. Law of attraction, like we attract what we are. We don't get what we want. We get what we are. And so if you want something different, if you want to attract something different, you have to be something different. It starts inside of you. And let me tell you what, like, if at all that feels like a really hard pill to swallow, join the club, because I was like, it can't be true. But I was already like, by the time I got into her messaging of that, I was already hooked on the morning rampage video. I was already hooked on the well-being meditation. Like, I definitely found her in the right order of like being eased in, so to speak, of like walking in through the shallow end of the pool. Because that was really hard to accept, that like everything in my life that was so not what I wanted it to be, that like there was a tuning knob somewhere inside of me that was set to the wrong station, and if I wanted something different, it wasn't a matter of making anybody else around me be different. It was a matter of making myself be different. And talk about challenging. Like at any age, like we have set ways, we have habits, we have habitual thoughts. The more times you think a thought, the easier it is to think it. And so my thoughts on my low worthiness, all the faults and all the flaws, all the things that were wrong with me, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm harsh, I'm rude, I'm offensive. These things just rolled right off the tongue. You see just how accessible they still are, because I've thought those thoughts a million fucking times. And my life reflected it. I felt like nobody around me can see my value. And as it turns out, that was a reflection of me not being able to see my value. And so learning about law of attraction, and really what she's teaching is how to be a steward, like a deliberate tuner of our emotional guidance system. So our emotional guidance system is telling us, like, when something feels really good to you, that's like you agreeing with your higher self. That's like a sign, that's your signal that your higher self thinks that thought. And when something feels really bad to you, that's letting you know that that's not where your higher self is. And so the bad feeling thought, it's not wrong, it's just not what your higher self knows to be true. And so when I think I'm ugly, and it breaks my freaking heart, because my higher self knows that I am beautiful from the inside out, right? Like, it's that disagreement. It's the split away from my own higher self, my inner being, my soul, whatever you want to call it. That is what feels bad. And so our thoughts generate feelings, right? Sometimes it can feel like the feeling comes first, and that's never true. The feeling is always a response to the thought you're thinking. And so being in charge of your emotional guidance system is a lot about being in charge of your thoughts and thinking new thoughts. Like, there was a reason why that morning rampage video felt so good. Like, there was a reason why those thoughts of like, this is a new day, like that has optimism in it, right? That has possibility in it. That means that I don't know exactly what's going to happen today. And that's a good thing, because the days I'm coming off of, the streak I'm coming off of, not so great. So this turning point of finding Abraham, studying law of attraction, learning about my emotional guidance system, this was really the beginning, like I said, of my spiritual path and connecting with my soul, connecting with a higher self, connecting with this power greater than myself. And that changed my life. And again, that's not the point of the episode, because that's all just how I got here. So I studied law of attraction for like 2.5 years. I listened to Abraham for hours a day, every single day, for 2.5 years. I let her wash my brain. Why? Why did I let myself be brainwashed by this person? Because it helped me to feel better. Do I know for a fact that it's true? No. Not unless you count feeling better as evidence of truth, which I do. Right? Do I have proof that she's legit and that she's, not got ulterior motives? Do I have proof that Abraham isn't something that she just made up in her imagination? No. Do I care? Absolutely not. So this journey of learning how to guide myself to feeling better using the thoughts that I think, that set me up on this trajectory that eventually led to astrology. And I'd go into all of that first because it gives me the perfect segue into then learning astrology. And like one of the funniest comments that I hear is like, there's no proof that the planets do anything. And it's like, who cares about that? If it makes you feel better, why do you need proof? What is the proof for? You know, like, why are you holding yourself in a place that doesn't feel good? Why would you do that to you? Don't you want to feel good? Aren't you willing to get there in whatever way you can get there? Like, if something helps you feel better, then follow it. And if something helps you feel worse, I'd cut ties with it, but that's just me. Right? Like, one of the greatest gifts that I've learned along this journey is about autonomy and personal sovereignty. And that means that if you want to needlessly suffer, there's nothing I can do about it. Right? The only suffering I can ever do anything about is my own. My own emotional guidance system, my own tuning knob is the only one that I have access to. It is not my right to reach into your life and tune your knob on your behalf. That's your job. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I don't want anybody else's hands on my knob. I crack myself up there. But yeah, so do I believe in astrology is a question that I think might come up as far as like, do you really believe in that? And again, it's like, it goes back to like, what even does that mean? What does it mean to believe in something? You know, the whole point of faith is that it helps you feel better. Right? The whole point of faith is that there is no proof and that maybe it can never be proven, but that it helps you to feel better. And whatever you put your faith in, I hope it helps you feel better. For me, that's astrology because more than anything else, it's about timing. It's a tool for self-exploration and self-reflection and guiding the timing of what questions are you asking yourself and when. Right? Like, we just are coming off the Virgo full moon at the time I'm recording this, and Virgo is all about service, and it has a lot to do with being really critical. Virgo has a very sharp attention to detail, and Virgo as an archetype, Virgo as an energy has a sharp attention to detail, and sometimes that means that you are a powerhouse for continuous improvement and making things as good as they possibly can be. And sometimes it means that you can literally drive yourself insane. Virgo archetype is where anxiety lives, because anxiety is being hyper aware of the way you want something to be compared to how you know it is. And it's that gap between those two things that breeds anxiety, and the bigger the gap, the more anxious we are. So Virgo energy, is it real? Does it matter? Do you relate to anxiety? Do you relate to being hypercritical of yourself? This is a time for reflecting on those things. And Pisces season, right? We're in Pisces season. That's always when the Virgo full moon happens, is when the moon is exactly opposite the sun. And right now the sun is in Pisces. And so Pisces season as a theory is, as an archetype, is about dissolving and letting go and transcending and rising above your own suffering. And the Virgo full moon is aiming to show you what is causing you to suffer. Right? Like, what is it? What is it that's hurting you? What thought are you thinking that's leading you to feel bad? And again, if it were me, I would work on that. I would work on massaging and understanding and untangling, like, what is that, and why do I think that about myself? You know, what is the programming that I was taught when I was younger, that was modeled in front of me? Like, it's not even always about what people say to us. It can sometimes even just be what they say in front of us. And we learn, we want so badly to belong. We have very tribal energy as humans. Like, we want to be a part, we want to belong. And So when we see someone that we respect or that we love and we want to be close to them, we begin modeling their behavior. So they don't even have to say things directly to us for us to absorb and catch the ways that they think about themselves and start thinking about ourselves like that. And then it's a matter of, again, not necessarily being like, okay, person who taught me this thing or person who modeled this for me, you need to be different. You need to model something different. So now I can observe that. And now I can absorb that. No. They get to be however they want to be. They get to think whatever thoughts they want to think. We each possess autonomy. We each possess personal sovereignty. And whatever helps them to feel better, that's for them to figure out. Nobody else can feel our emotional guidance system except for us. And the thing about that emotional guidance system that I think is really important to mention, as far as like why can some people's behavior look so confusing to us, it's like when let's take anger is a perfect example. Is anger a good feeling thought? What do you think? Is anger a good feeling thought? To be angry about something? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on where you're coming from. Because if you're in joy, if you're in contentment and peacefulness, and then you feel angry, it's a horrible feeling thought. It feels terrible. It feels like it grates at the inside of your body. And why would anybody think this feels good? But the answer is because if you're in depression, if you're in apathy, which is a very lifeless feeling, anger feels like power. Anger feels like being alive. And so at that point, anger is the positive improvement over depression. Like if you've ever studied the grieving process, the first step is denial, the second step is anger. And it's like, wait, what? Well, to be in denial is to feel numb, to feel unalive, to feel lifeless. And when you get angry about something, you take some of your power back. And so to be angry, is it a good feeling thought? It depends on where you're coming from. Our emotional guidance system, the emotional scale, it's not exactly linear. It's kind of more of a spiral, but there's an improving and a descending, like an ascending and a descending to it that says like, are you moving more towards positive feeling? And that's really how you know if something feels good. And so to look at somebody and see them being angry, it's like that may be their better feeling thought, and who are you to judge? You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what they've been living recently that means that this anger is actually the best part of their day, right? For you, it might not be. And that's why it's very good anytime you make a gratitude list to put personal sovereignty on it, because nobody else's thoughts have to be yours. You get to think your own thoughts, and you get to guide your own emotional guidance system, and you get to connect with your higher self and your good feelings as much as you want, no matter what anybody else is doing. That's why personal sovereignty rocks, in my opinion. So when it comes back to learning astrology, like, it's not even a matter of like believing in it or believing that it's true. It's a matter of like, I have now almost 4 years worth of evidence of it helps me feel better. And one of the reasons is because, like, for example, this Virgo full moon, and like Virgo is all about like being critical of our environment, of ourselves, of the people around us, like all that stuff. And that critical eye, like there are plenty of people who make a living using that critical eye of like, where could we improve this? I would say I'm even one of them, of like, I see potential. And like that could be criticism. That could be called criticism over where we are now, because I always see how we could make it better. But knowing that that's the season of like where we are in these few days, and then I see like I received a couple pieces of criticism of like, this was wrong. You shouldn't have said that. I think that's disrespectful. I think that it's like this. I don't think you said it right there. And so like being criticized is very triggering for me. And I know from my contemplations around this Virgo full moon and the Pisces season that like this is a time of being shown like what are the thoughts that are hurting you and what is it that you're ready to dissolve and transcend. And so as these criticisms come up, instead of just being reactive or defensive or anything like that, I take it and I sit with it and I go inward as far as like, why is this thought hurting me? Why is it that in this beautiful world where everybody has the right to their own personal sovereignty, why am I so offended when somebody thinks that I'm doing it wrong? Are they in charge of my dial? Do they get to put their hand on my knob? Right? Like, no, they don't. I get to think what I think and they get to think what they think. And if I learn something from them, if I see their point of view and I think, wow, yeah, you've got something there. Maybe that helps me feel better actually, and I want to move closer to that. Great. But if it's the opposite, if it's somebody that feels like they're saying something that hurts me, that feels bad, that feels like a step backwards, then don't go that way. Dissolve the idea that there has to be consensus among every single person on this planet. Like, just because we're different doesn't mean we're divided. I think there's a lot of people mistaking differences for division, and that's unfortunate because really we're more unified than we think. We all like to think what we think. We all like to be safe. None of us like to be threatened. There are many ways that we are unified as a human race. And personally, I think being in these human bodies and having this guidance system and having our thoughts trigger feelings and all of that is one such unifying experience. And for me, astrology is one tool. I have many others that help me to guide my reflections in a certain timing, that helps me to be with whatever it is that's coming up and to work with myself in this kind of like piecemeal way that's not overwhelming, to where I can really take one piece at a time and study it and look at it and transform it just a little bit. And then before you know it, it's the next season, right? What comes after Pisces season? Aries. So Aries, the beginning of life, the spark of new life. Like after we dissolve and transcend all of these old limiting beliefs and limiting thoughts that we have about ourselves, all of these things that are making us suffer, that dissolves during Pisces season, and it makes space within us to receive this burst of new life that's coming when we have the Aries equinox, the spring equinox. So this is how I personally use astrology to make myself feel better. And that has absolutely changed my life. And so if you have enjoyed this, I would really appreciate it if you would like the episode, follow the podcast, subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening. I would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, wherever you found the episode. Go back, share a little bit about what this stirred in you. Whether you follow astrology or not, what is it that you use to help yourself feel better? What do you use to guide your thoughts, to help shift your mindset so that your thoughts generate positive feelings, better feelings, day after day after day? There is no top end to how good we can feel. Like for the 15 years that I was in the depression, I knew from personal lived experience that there's no bottom to how bad we can feel. The bottom is deciding that you don't want to be here anymore. And I've stared into that abyss more times than I care to admit. And I am now very pleased to be able to say with just as much certainty, there's no top end to how good we can feel. We can feel better and better and better and better and better for the rest of our lives. It gets better, always, when we point ourselves in that direction. And astrology is just one way that I do that. Dear friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me. It is my pleasure to be with you in this new era of the Life-Changing Learning podcast. Until next time, I do hope that you will take really, really exceptionally good care of yourself and so will I.